Welcome to the Karen Kenney Show.
Hey, you guys, welcome to the Karen Kenney Show. I'm so happy to be here with you. I have a little injury to my right shoulder, so I might be doing a lot of talking like with one hand. Because I can't really lift my other hand. I can't lift my arm, so I can't really get it up into the camera. Oh my God. Okay, sidebar, and we're back. This is going to be, I think, a super duper short episode. What I have to say, I'm just going to kind of get to the point and say it. I'm going to call this sucker 1 second decisions. 1 second decisions. And this episode is inspired by somebody who I often will say is one of the resident ass kickers on my spiritual team. So if you've listened to me at all, if you like read my content, listen to the podcast, have been in the nest or the quest or worked with me one-to-one, whatever, you've heard me talk about having a spiritual team. And so I have a lot of different members on my spiritual team. I am a spiritual mutt for sure. Some of my members of my spiritual team are right behind me and all around me. But one of them is a guy called David Goggins. So David Goggins, I'm going to hold up one at a time his books. So his first book, Can't Hurt Me, right? Can't Hurt Me, Master Your Mind and Defy the Odds. And then his second book, hold on, I'm trying to do this with one hand. I'm holding them up. It says, Never Finished. Unshackle Your Mind and Win the War Within. Never Finished and Can't Hurt Me. I highly recommend these books to people. I love David Goggins for a lot of reasons. He's somebody who, to me, really signifies somebody who was brave enough, ballsy enough to look at himself very clearly and see that some of the choices that he was making, some of the things that he was doing, the way he was being in the world was not, how do I say it? He was not afraid. He was not afraid to discover his own brilliance, but he's definitely not afraid of his own bullshit. And he, to me, is like the ultimate like transformation story. Like I really love a fantastic before and after, whether it's a physical transformation, an emotional, mental, spiritual transformation. I love before and afters. And David, why am I wheezing when I breathe? Can you guys hear that little whistle? What is that? Okay. Anyways, so David Goggins is somebody that if I'm going through like a tough time, whether that's physically when I'm working out or running up a hill or like doing whatever. I have a couple of ass kickers on my spiritual team that I call upon. So he's one of my inspirations. And so anyways, this is where today's episode comes from. So when I was at the gym, this is like a past story, but it's coming up into my consciousness today. And that's how I usually know it's a sign to share it when it floats up into my old noggin. And then I was like, wait, have I ever talked about this before? And if I have, I apologize. I feel crazy, but I looked and I couldn't find an episode. Once you start to get like 280 plus episodes in, you're like, wait, have I talked about this before? So I remember one day I was at the gym and I was lifting weights and then I was doing cardio afterwards. And I listened to him. I remember the first time I heard him talk about what he called 1 second decision, the 1 second decision. And it really got me thinking about how we face in our lifetime a lot of moments where we are making that 1 second decision in our life. And it's that point kind of where we're struggling, where we're stuff like if you're struggling or you're suffering or you're starting to lose sight of maybe why you thought that whatever the fuck you were doing was a good idea in the first place. You know, when you start like a project, like a DIY project, right? You know, there's always that moment when you start to question, like, what is wrong with me? Like, why did I think like moving across country was a good idea? Why did I think applying to school, going back to school was a good idea? Why did I think that I could X, Y, and Z, write this book or whatever, sign up for this marathon or climb a mountain or whatever the thing is? There comes a moment when the thing that we're trying to accomplish right now, we start to question ourselves and we start to think, oh my God. And a lot of times in that moment of pain, in that moment of discomfort, in that moment of what we're experiencing as hell, we can make that 1 second decision to quit. right? Because you're kind of standing there and you're bumping up against yourself. You're bumping up either your physical discomfort or your emotional discomfort or your mental discomfort or your spiritual discomfort. And you're just kind of like hovering there. And, I talk about it like this. I say the decision to bail, fail, or go off the rails might only take 1 second to choose. I'm going to say that again. The decision to bail, fail, or go off the rails might only take 1 second to choose, right? To make that decision. But the ramifications of that 1 second decision can last a lifetime. And the reality of it is, you guys, is that this being human is not always easy. This being human sometimes is wicked, wicked, wicked hard. And we're not always going to feel like it. You know how like there are just days when you're like, I just don't feel like it. I don't feel like doing the damn thing. I don't feel like doing the right thing. I don't feel like keeping my word. I don't feel like showing up. I don't feel like fill in the blank, right? And there's going to be plenty of times when you're just not in the mood. You don't want to drive to the gym. You don't want to lace up your sneakers or go for a run. You don't want to say, you're sorry first. You don't want to be vulnerable. You don't want to admit that you are wrong. You don't want to face your own shit. You don't want to have to do the work. You don't want to have to be, quote unquote, I'm doing little air quotes, the bigger person. There's just going to be times when you're less like, no, like, and whether, like I said, it's physically, like you are not feeling up to the physical challenge, or emotionally. Right? You don't want to be vulnerable. You're too afraid to say, I love you first, or I'm sorry, or whatever the thing is. You may not be psyched about doing certain things that require some discipline. And again, whether that's physical, whether that's mental or emotional, right? You won't be psyched about the discipline of slowing down your mind or training your brain through repetition, or slowing yourself down and being more mindful through meditation, or you you just won't be in the mood. You won't feel like doing your DSP that day. And those 1 second decisions when you're standing there, right? And you're like, oh, and you don't think it's a big deal to just say no, or to not keep your word, or to let yourself down, right? To not have self-integrity for yourself. In that 1 second decision, we just think, oh, it's not that big of a deal. It's just one time. But those 1 second decisions, right? Because I know so many people who like, how do I say this? So when I do my intake at work, when I'm talking to people, right? So I have a part-time gig, some of you might know. And when I start talking to people and I'll ask them, why don't you stretch? Like, why don't you do this thing? And sometimes they'll just be like, I don't feel like it, or, but here's the thing. It feels like not that big of a deal. Or they'll say something to me like this. Well, I used to stretch. I used to stretch every day. And then I'll say, okay, that's a good clue. What happened? What happened when you were doing something every day, and then what happened? And they'll like repeatedly say some version of this. I don't know. One day I just stopped doing it. I just made the decision, I guess, to not do it. And then one day turned into 2, turned into 3, turned into 4. We see this all the time when people like are trying to build a practice or a habit of like, whether, again, it's just easy to do physical things because we can all usually relate, right? Of like going to the gym or drinking more water, and people will say, oh, I was on a really good roll. Like I had a really good, pattern or a really good habit building. And then one day you make that 1 second decision and you kind of go, fuck it. Like not a big deal. But that 1 second decision can have compound, right, damage, and it can have last a lifetime. And so here's the thing. When you're in that place, when you're about to fail, bail, or go off the rails, right? When you're just like ready to self-sabotage yourself, in that moment, that's exactly when you have got to remember why you started doing the thing in the first place. Why starting that project? Why starting to write that book? Why doing what you're doing? Right? Whether it's, going vegan, or, eating better, or being more compassionate, or communicating better, reading more books, like whatever your thing is, right? This could be 1,000 things that you decide to do. You got to remember why you started it in the first place. You got to remember what it really means to you. You have to kind of get under, as I say. You have to think about who you're going to be after you keep your word to yourself, or maybe somebody else. And you have to ask yourself, you have to really look at how that 1 second decision to keep showing up can make all the difference in the world. And so that's really all I wanted to say, is to not blow off those moments when you think you're just making a quick off the cuff 1 second decision, because those 1 second decisions made again and again and again and again and again, they're part of what makes us who we are. They're part of, I don't always like the word legacy, but it's part of like who we're going to be in the world. And those 1 second decisions, those choices that we make, they do become our patterns, our habits, our character, how we're remembered, and how we think of ourselves. You know what I mean? So let's just take a moment when you're about to kind of make that 1 second decision, when you're in that place where you're, like I said, like where it gets hard, when you're struggling, when you're suffering, when you're starting to lose sight of why you started a damn project. I can guarantee you, double amen hands. I can't raise up for double amen hands though, for the times when like maybe you started a project, like whether it's like, oh, I'm gonna build a garden, or I'm gonna like paint this room, or there always comes that moment when you feel really tempted to just say, screw it, like I'm not doing this thing anymore. Like I don't have the energy, the time, the motivation, the smarts, the money, the whatever, the educate, whatever it is. But in that moment, that's when you've got that, in that 1 second decision, you get to decide who you're going to be and how you're going to be, and to not let yourself down, right? So look, there are times in life, this is a whole other episode, when it might be appropriate to quit. But most of the time, we just start to get overwhelmed. And this is why if we can learn some tools to help our nervous system, and whether that's tapping or breath work or bilateral stimulation or prayer or meditation or using a mantra, or whatever it is, we can really help ourselves to not bail or fail or go off the rails. And so just know those 1 second decisions really, really, really matter. So here's to the 1 second decisions that you're making today and that you will make tomorrow. And let's make these suckers count. Okay. So from my hat to yours, I hope you're making a lot of fantastic 1 second decisions, and that you're leaning towards love, that you're leaning towards keeping your word to yourself, that you're leaning towards not bailing or failing or going off the rails. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in, you guys. I know this is a little short, but sweet. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your night. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're an old listener, like a regular, not old, you know what I mean? Like if you're a regular, why am I calling people old? Oh my God, I'm getting punchy. Okay. Whether you're a regular listener or you're a new listener, I'm just so happy to spend a little time together. So thank you for listening. I appreciate you. And if you want to find out what I'm up to, what's going on in my world, just come on over, join my newsletter. It's just KarenKenney.com/sign up, or come join us in the Nest, my spiritual mentoring group. We have such an incredible community, so many beautiful people, and we have a lot of fun. We get a lot of work done and we have a lot of fun. And that's just KarenKenney.com/nest. All right, you guys, I appreciate you. Wherever you go, may you leave yourself, the people, the place, the animals, the environment better than how you first found it. Wherever you go, may you in your 1 second decisions, right, be a blessing. Bye.